You're listening to Workforce Innovation News, powered by LWIA 23. Get ready to hear about all things workforce development and workforce innovation. And now, on to the episode.
Hello, and welcome to WIN, Workforce Innovation News. I am Jamie Corda-Hajawi, the director for LWIA 23. Today, I am joined by Justin Onikite. He is the Transportation Training Director at Lakeland College. Hi, Justin. How are you?
Coordinator.
Coordinator. I made you sound even better, though.
Yeah.
Director sounds very professional, very high level.
A little more official.
A little more official. Well, thank you for joining me. I know you kind of decided to hop on last minute as a replacement for your colleague who was going to do a podcast with me today. So I really appreciate your flexibility and your willingness to jump in and take care of business. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
So Justin, before we get into really talking about the CDL program at Lakeland and what you're doing, can you just give us a little bit of background about yourself, how long you've been at Lakeland and what maybe got you into the position you are at with the CDL program?
Well, I did 16 years in the United States Marine Corps. I was a truck driver in the military. I was also a trainer for the truck drivers in the military. When I got out and I just went over the road, I drove over the road for a year, driving semi-trucks. Then after a year, I applied for the job here and got the job as the Transportation Training Coordinator.
That is really cool. And I did not know this about you, but my grandpa was actually in the Air Force, and he was the CDL trainer in the Air Force at Chinook Base and Rantoul, and now he drives for trucking out of Champaign. So your stories kind of sound similar. I didn't realize that. That is too cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for your service. Awesome. And I'm glad that you're here with Lakeland now. So CDL has kind of been a hot topic for quite a few different reasons lately, particularly in the workforce world. One of the new things in February, there were some federal changes to what the entry-level driver training looks like. There's some new regulations. And just overall, a lot of the recent supply chain issues have definitely related to trucking industry and logistics and everything. So tell me a little bit more about the changes in the entry-level driver training programs and kind of what are some new changing hot topics there in the CDL world?
Okay. Yeah, the law, the entry-level driver training law is actually a law that's been, or it's a rule that's been put into place for quite a few years now. It was supposed to take effect about 5 years ago, then it was delayed for a few years, and now it's finally coming into effect, and it came into effect on February 7th. The rule the rule basically says that you are required to go through a certified training provider. Now, a training provider can be a school, they could be a company, they could be anyone, as long as they're teaching the required curriculum and following the state's laws regarding the CDL programs. So anyone could be a training provider, but you have to go through a training provider to be able to test for your CDL. That includes both the Class A CDLs, the Class B CDLs, along with school bus and your hazardous materials and passenger endorsements.
So prior to this, to get a CDL license, you did not have to have a regulated training. You could just know the material, know how to drive, learning it on the fly or in personal experience at home or whatever, and then take the test.
Correct. Yeah. Before this, you were able to basically go through with your own vehicle and take your test. The reason that they kind of put this law into effect is just they were getting a lot of people that were not well trained in going over state lines. And it was created a little bit of a hazard, with someone that doesn't know the rules, doesn't know the regulations. Now they're driving over state lines. So they're trying to make the road safer by implementing this rule.
That makes sense. Get everyone on the same page, following the same regulations so that we can increase safety on the roadways. Because
Yeah.
pretty big trucks, aren't they?
All right. And everyone's trained using the same curriculum.
All right, awesome. So now that you know that my grandpa's a truck driver, and I remember a few years back him kind of talking about some things and some changes and what work was making him do, stuff like that. I don't think the reaction from all the truck drivers or people in that sector were necessarily positive when this was coming to fruition. What kind of, I mean, we know that it's good, it's making everyone safer, but what kind of constraints does it put on to trucking businesses?
Well, the real issue that people are running into is, is the time it takes to train a driver. It takes us about 6 weeks to get through all the events, 2 weeks classroom, 4 weeks of outside. So it does take a little bit longer to train a driver up to the standards required by the regulation. So a lot of it is that the companies are trying to, they're not used to having to send their employee away for this long, to be able to complete the training. They're used to being able to either do it themselves, where they retain the employee during that time, or they're used to them just being able to come for a quick little class and get their license and be done with it.
And we know, especially now with the skilled worker shortage that a lot of the labor market's facing, employers don't have time to send their employees away for additional training. They don't have time to take them out of the job, even if it's required. It puts a burden onto the employer. So it is understandable that there's always some cons to go along with the pros. So doing things the safe and the right way just takes a little bit longer. But I did not realize, I know to the trucking industry, it sounds like 6 weeks of training is a long time, but to me in the world of higher education, 6 weeks sounds super fast. Were you able to do, when you had to come up with the new curriculum to adhere to these regulations, did that increase your training time or did it decrease, or was it kind of around the same? Have you always gotten people certified in 6 weeks?
Our program used to be 4 weeks. We did extend it 2 weeks, one more classroom week, and we have one more training week outside doing range operations. So there's some more backing events that we're teaching now that we didn't teach before, or we didn't really harp on before. But now we're making sure the students are mastering those events. So yeah, it did increase our program length by about 2 weeks.
Again, doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're comparing 4 weeks to 6 weeks, that is like a 50% increase. So,
well, that and our program kind of differs from the main or the traditional class by the fact that instead of coming for an hour or two a day, our classes are all day long. So instead of stretching it out over the traditional semester, we have our students for a full day.
So you're definitely fast tracking them.
Correct.
Awesome. That is very important, we're seeing in higher education, because people they got to get to work. They have families to take care of. They don't necessarily all have time to go through a 2-year program. If they want a certification, a licensure, a degree, anything, they want to be able to do it quickly, get it over with, and then get back to making the money to support their family.
Correct. And we don't have like the requirements like the English and the prerequisite classes. We don't have those, as far as the CDLs. We're one of the few classes here on campus, or we might even be the only class that doesn't require a GED or high school diploma.
Really?
No, they don't need either.
Okay, I didn't realize that either. That is good to know though. And that kind of leads me to something else I wanted to talk about a bit. We know that there's a skilled labor shortage. A lot of employers across different sectors are looking for different populations to get into the workforce that they normally in the past might not have considered because they've had the pick of the litter. they've been able to pick the best of the best and have people competing for positions. And now it's kind of the opposite. They have employees, job seekers have many offers and they get to pick which offer they take. So employers are having to look in different directions. So I did read about, I believe it was Connecticut, they're looking at passing some legislature that would allow or maybe even require current inmates to go through CDL training within the 6 to 10 weeks before they're released, so that when they're released from prison, they have a CDL license, they're able to get into the workforce, start earning money, one, to keep them self-sufficient and to prevent them from going back into the system, and also to beef up the local workforce. And we know that transportation is a high demand sector right now. So are you seeing that there's any local trucking employers that are looking to reentry populations that they might normally not have been considering? Are they changing their expectations of who they will hire on or are willing to train and work with?
Well, since the big labor crunch that we've been having lately, we're actually getting a lot of new employers that are calling us, employers that we never had before, that are the local companies. You know, it used to be just a few local companies would come in and want to hire, and now it's, you know, doubled or tripled as far as the local employment. The days of you have to go over the road for 3 years or you have to have your experience over the road, those are pretty much gone. You know, a lot of the companies are hiring the entry level drivers, you know, as local employers will be hiring them. Same thing with a lot of the companies that never, you know, even the over the road companies that required experience, a lot of them are dropping their experience down and they'll take the newer drivers versus, you know, the people that had 3 years. So as they're looking for more employees, they're, you know, looking at their requirements for hiring.
I'm not surprised at all to hear that. I think a lot of employers in many different sectors are kind of reassessing what they can work with and who they're looking for in their outreach. So you have more employers than ever reaching out to you to try to see if you can produce a pipeline of future employees for them. How many students do you have coming into your program at Lakeland? Do you have a whole bunch? And then are you able to get them all into jobs immediately, or is it normally the employer sending them to you? How's it looking there at your
Yeah, we have a mixture of both. We work with a lot of the local employers for people that are doing like we call them doctor driver programs. They're the programs where people are already working at the company, but they need a driver. So the company's paying for them to come through CDL school. We also work with a lot of the students that are going through, you know, like a WEO program where they were laid off from somewhere. And WEO is paying for them to come through and get retraining. That way they can make a better wage. So those are roughly about 60% of our students can come through under those programs. Then we do have the private pay students that come through funding themselves. Now, a lot with that, as far as students needing jobs or getting jobs, the jobs are out there if they want them. We don't place anyone in a job, but we'll place the information in front of them and let them know these people are looking, these people are searching for, or we'll ask the student, what kind of job are you looking for? And we'll kind of direct them where they need to be kind of looking at. So we do have recruiters that come visit. We have companies that come in, they'll talk about their company. They'll talk to the students about it, you know, and try to, you know, they'll give them their pay, their benefits, and tell them a little bit about the company and what they do and that kind of stuff. And it's up to the student whether they want to go to that company or not.
Very cool. I'm glad that you get that information out there in front of them, though. Do you have many students that report back to you after they've got their CDL and they're working to tell you like, hey, I did get a job really quick, or they don't really follow back up much?
It's a little of both. There's some students that will reach out, hey, I'm working here, I'm doing this, or I'm working here, but the majority of the students we never hear from. And I mean, if we never hear from them, it means they're probably not looking for a job. They're probably
Right.
employed somewhere.
You spent your 6 weeks with them, they got what they needed, and now they're
Mhm.
off flying on their own on the road, so.
Right. They're employed somewhere.
Well, and you said that about 60% of your students they're receiving some WIOA funds to pay for their tuition.
Correct.
So tuition, I mean, just whenever you think of training at all and the cost of tuition, it seems astronomical, and it is a burden on people. So I am very happy to hear that our contractor CEFS is able to help students get into your program, and that WIOA funds are able to foot the tuition. How much is the tuition like currently? I'm sure it could change between now and the next few months, but what is a prospective CDL student to expect as far as tuition goes?
The tuition for the course is $4,250 for the Class A CDL course. Class B is $2,000.
Okay.
We do offer payment programs as well and stuff like that. And along with that, a lot of the companies now, if a student will come through with a private pay, companies will actually do tuition reimbursement. So they'll reimburse that student for getting their CDL while they're with the company. The companies that we work with, for the most part, are no contract. We don't deal with any contracting.
Okay. All right. So now that we're in this tight labor market, and you're seeing a lot more companies come to you looking for either getting their current employees trained, or looking to see if you have students that could potentially be their employees. What is it that are you seeing more that they have? And you may have already answered this and I have forgotten already. Are you seeing more that they have someone that they just need to get additional training for, or more that they're looking for the new employee?
Again, it's kind of a mixture of both, depending on, I know a lot of companies, they want, if they do a drop to driver program, they want that employee to have been with them for a while to show that employee is willing to stay with the company. Because of course, as soon as they get the license, then they're free to, they can go anywhere. And the grass is always greener if someone's paying a little bit more. So they want that person that has a little bit of loyalty to the company, that's been with them, that's going to stick with them at least a year or two. But then there's companies that, they'll put their own employees through, but yet they'll take someone else too that has just graduated. So there's kind of the mixture of both in there.
Okay, and I'm asking you this because it's to lead into this next thing I'm going to ask you was, first of all, I hope you know about our incumbent worker training, and so that WIOA dollars that don't necessarily go to the individual, but can help the employer foot that cost of training. I hope you're connecting with Tony down the hall to make sure that we got some incumbent worker training going on there, but also incumbent worker training and those new employees getting skills so that they can get on the road. Both of those are unofficial apprenticeships. So it sounds like there's some opportunities for apprenticeships in CDL. Have you explored any of those opportunities? Are you seeing other training programs in the area jump on this apprenticeship bandwagon? What's your take on that?
As you know, we've been kind of pounding the pavement trying to get an apprenticeship for the CDL program. We've approached multiple different companies around the area. And we're working through that process right now, trying to get some apprenticeships going and working with them. Yeah, we've talked to Tony quite a bit about it. Several different companies, me and Bonnie have, about the incumbent worker dollars and stuff like that. And that's another thing that I always bring up when I'm talking to a company is, hey, you need to talk to these people. And likewise, when I talk to a student, I'll ask them a few questions and try to see what's going on in their life right now about, are they employed? Are they low income? Stuff like that, where I can direct them towards a grant versus them coming in and trying to pay for themselves. Yeah.
Definitely appreciate the referrals that you're doing. It is wonderful. But looking at apprenticeships, you had a couple companies that are interested, but is there something that's holding them back? What do you think is preventing that? Why haven't we already had apprenticeships established, and what's not making the process go so quickly?
I don't know. It seems like a good deal on my part, or a good idea on my part, but I think a lot of it is the companies are busy. The economy's booming right now, so just like we're busy here, they're busy there. So I don't know if they just haven't had enough time to sit down and look at this, whether or that, or maybe their corporate, the way it's structured, they have a lot of hoops to jump through, with their corporate structure as well. But there are a few, and there again with the companies too, there's some turnover. So we'll go talk to one person at the company, and they'll say, yeah, they want to do it, and they want to start, or they'll start getting the paperwork and stuff in order. Then they'll switch out, someone else will take over. Now we have to kind of start over again. So there's a lot of turnover in the business sector too as well.
I know that's not a great thing, but that is exactly the answer I was looking for, because my team is working on establishing an apprenticeship navigator, a dedicated person to leading businesses through the whole process of establishing apprenticeships. And actually the process is not quite as hard, I think, as businesses think it is. They kind of hear, oh, this paperwork and we got to come up with a curriculum, and they kind of, I don't have time. Let's table that for a moment. So do you think having an individual that can go out and meet with businesses and being completely dedicated to apprenticeships and guiding local employers through that process, do you think that's going to increase the potential apprenticeships that we can develop in the area, not just in CDL, but across sectors?
I think it would. I know a lot of it, when they hear Department of Labor, now they're thinking there's a ton of paperwork that comes along with, of course, any program. There's going to be quite a bit of paperwork, or they think there's a lot of paperwork. As far as like the curriculums, I know for CDL, they're already out there, they're already built. You just basically have to cut and paste. And when you do that, it takes a 5-hour process and knocks it down to 30 minutes, because they've already designed the apprenticeships. They just basically have to go out and pick which one fits them the best. So
right. So if you feel like becoming an apprenticeship navigator, I have a position open.
you know a person, right?
I do. I know someone. We can pull some strings, get you in there. No, but really, I think you're exactly right that people get this idea that Department of Labor, registered apprenticeship, oh man, that's a bureaucratic nightmare. And, in honesty, there is a lot of paperwork with anything that we do, but we here at LWIA 23 really try to keep that on the back end. Like even with the incumbent worker training program, Tony takes care of a ton of paperwork and makes the paperwork for the business super easy, simple, smooth process, and then takes care of all the back end stuff. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do with the navigator too. Yeah, business might have to fill out a form, but then we'll have the navigator doing all that back work. So really hoping that that's the key to getting some of these CDL companies on board with establishing apprenticeships, because we're seeing that apprenticeships do lead to more loyalty from the employee to the employer. When they see that employer investing in them, putting them through a training program, believing in them, they're more likely to stay there longer. There won't be so much turnover rate. So that might help address some of the problems that we're seeing come from this tight labor market, but only time will tell. And hopefully we'll see some movement here in the next few months and help some of our local employers kind of just face these new challenges with some additional tools and help under their belts. So is there anything else that you have going on in the CDL program that you want to get out there, you want any of our listeners to know about?
Well, mine's a pretty easy program.
Well, here, how about this? Because I do know of some of the things that you have going on. So what kind of new equipment do you have for your program?
Well, last January, we bought 2 new to us trucks. They're 2016 International semi trucks. We also brought a 2015 Freightliner box truck to help grow the program. We're looking at opening up some additional locations in the area. So we're looking at the feasibility of opening those and getting the new vehicles for those areas and new instructors too as well. So we're kind of looking to expand in the area to help serve the community. Currently, we have quite the waiting list for students that need to come through, and that we don't want that. We don't want the waiting list. We want the student to be able to come, quickly get their, they don't have to wait 6 weeks before their 6-week class. We want them to be able to, come to class quickly. And get through it and get back to work. So we're looking at expanding our capacity with the students as well.
That is very cool. I did not realize that you guys were looking at other locations as well, because Lakeland serves a 4,000 square mile district.
Correct.
And Mattoon, that's kind of towards the top middle of it. There's still a whole bunch of area south that we serve. So what other locations are you looking at? Can you tell me, or is this still too new to talk about?
Well, potentially, we'd like to open a location wherever we have outreach center. So maybe Effingham and possibly Pana as well. We currently already have one in Marshall.
Oh, okay. I don't think I realized that either.
Yeah, we have one here in Mattoon.
And I don't even realize all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, we have one here in Mattoon and we have one in Marshall already. So we're looking at possibly expanding over to Pana and Effingham areas to help, kind of serve the entire community area where you don't have to drive 40 miles to get to a class.
Mm-hmm. Are you looking at that wait list of students and seeing where they're from and trying to get a little closer to them? Is that what's really driving looking at Pana and Effingham?
Well, Pana, the bad thing about Pana is you're looking at 40 miles to any school. It's 40 miles to Springfield, 40 miles to Decatur, 40 miles down to Vandalia, and 40 miles to us. So there's just nothing in their area local. And quite a few of my students do come from that area. Same thing with Marshall. There's nothing in that area there's no schools in that area. It's either us or, Terre Haute. So yeah, we're looking at where the student doesn't have to drive for an extended period of time just to get to classes.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's helping them overcome some burdens, because we all know gas is expensive. So driving to school, if you have to go very far, you might change your mind about going to school. That's for sure.
Correct.
So I like the accessibility that you guys are addressing. That's wonderful. All right. Any parting thoughts for our listeners before we go?
That's it.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and being so flexible to do it on the fly. And I've learned a lot more about your program than I knew. And we're in the same building all the time. So this was really cool and I appreciate it very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. See you later. Bye.
You've been listening to Workforce Innovation News powered by LWIA 23. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about LWIA 23, visit lwa23.net.